where are we going from here?
Questions from the internet. We're going to talk about. There have been a lot of comments about how much people enjoyed talking about historic dogs and breedings. And there was one historic dog that I'm fond of, Grand Champion Caesar. And there were some just questions about
How he came to be?
How he came to be, and there was also a question about Negra Tomasa. So how did that dog come to be? The other dogs in the pedigree, like I'm familiar with all of them, but that one not so much, and the history behind that one not so much. Also, the person that asked the question about Caesar said BDB ducked Caesar. So I don't know if you...
That's really ironic. I don't know anything about that. In other words, I was not present, nor was I involved in any way in how that was presented. There's 100 potential interpretations and realities about that interchange that could put a whole different look on that thing. I've not known either party involved to be particularly fearful, and I've known both parties to be honorable. So I don't think there's any need to breathe any more life into that dilemma. That's one of those things. It's better to let it fade away.
Sure.
Okay, so to that end, to make sure that I address this properly, I want to present the pedigree of Negra Tomasa, because the Caesar story starts with her. So let me pull this up so that I can present correct information. And a lot of this stuff happened many years ago, so if I screw something up, I promise you it's not intentional. I'm human. I'm 6 weeks away from being 70 years old. There are moments when the brain still works pretty good. There are moments whenever it's not as good. So if we have one of the latter moments, please forgive me in advance. But I'm pulling up this pedigree to make sure that we minimize the probabilities of gross errors. Okay.
Yeah, with the China Rose, and in the bottom of that pedigree, there's like a lot of the Nigerino dog in there that might not be available, might not be present in some of the other pedigrees, and that's...
Well, the breeding that produced Simba, the essential cross that brought out something that was different was Chinaman to Zipper. Okay, Zipper was a double-bred daughter of Nigerino, and Sam Cates, the owner of Nigerino, contacted me and offered a trade. He had a double-bred daughter, a puppy that was a double-bred daughter of Negrino, and he wanted one of my Spike and Miss Molly pups, and it was a good trade for both of us, because I've wanted some of the Negrino blood, and what he stood to gain from the Spike Miss Molly pup was something in retrospect that was clearly one of the best breedings that's ever been done. That was super productive in all sorts of ways. Spike to Miss Molly produced Garner's little gator, often referred to as Wiseman's or Ranchero's little gator, but I know exactly where the dog came from. I know what the dog's name was when it left. Not saying that that Rancherito didn't do a wonderful job of breeding and developing the offspring. They did. They did a wonderful job. And my hat's off to them for all they accomplished with the dog, with the breedings from that dog. But nevertheless, he left here with the papers that said Garner's a little gator. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Anyway, Sam arrived here, drove up here with Zipper. Got that name because if you look at a zipper, it's long and not very thick. And this little pup had the Nigerino look. She was longer and a little less tall than you would expect. Not extremely. A nicely built pup, and I was happy to get her and presented Sam with a nice pup, and we had a great visit. He brought Nigerino with him, and I got to hang out with him a little bit and just felt some of his energy and was impressed with him. So he leaves me with the pup, and he takes his pup. Sadly, it was within a few months, from what I gather, the pup that he took home with him was stolen. And Lord knows where that dog ended up or what he ended up accomplishing, but almost all the Spike Miss Molly dogs ended up making a difference wherever they went. But we bred Zipper to Chinaman. Actually bred her twice. The first time she only had maybe 2 pups. The second time she had China Rose, and China Rose earned her title and then was bred to Frisco. All right, so that produced Simba. Simba was a great dog in and of his own right. Probably the roughest dog that I've ever seen. Probably had the most bite of any dog I've ever seen. I would have to say it was in such a high range that there was one other dog that I saw that seemed to be in that range, and that was Tornado. Tornado could really close her mouth. I just often imagine what the two of them together would have produced, because that was just a ungodly machine-like mouth. So there were some other uniquenesses to the personality of Simba. Simba, I don't know whether he got shocked by lightning in a lightning storm younger, but he would go into a hyperadrenal state in a thunderstorm whenever lightning would flash, or really it didn't even have to be evident that lightning had flashed. If there was a sudden loud explosive sound, he went crazy. He would come out of his house and grab the opening of it and just rip it apart, or depending on how his housing was constructed. If it was a barrel, he would pick it up over his head and sling it just side to side. Just a level of energy and athleticism that you don't see many times in your life from a dog. So that explosiveness in a dog that was otherwise pretty mild-mannered, that was triggered by a loud noise. You could fire a gun into the ground near him, and he would immediately have this hyperadrenal burst and work at an insane pace. And any loud sound would do that. And that was utilized anytime that it was desirable to work him. You could pair the work activity with a very loud, explosive sound, and he would do whatever work was in front of him at an incredible pace. All right, so there was a point in Simba's life that I made a deal with Bulldog Barn to send Simba to him, and he did great things with him. Rodney did a great job of breeding him, and gave him a good life. And I would, looking back, if I advised for him to do anything differently, and I think he would agree, would have been to breed him more. But there are realities in owning dogs, and if the realities allow you to do a lot of breeding, then you can, but they don't always allow you to do that. But just looking back, his offspring were good enough, and they filled a void in a particular way. It would be great if there were more of his offspring. But one thing that Rodney did that was particularly beneficial to me, he heard about this female that was an especially hard evaluated female named Negra Tomasa. Would you look up her pedigree for me, Brad? I want to be able to share with you, and I remember as being a primarily Eli bred female, and I'm remembering the names Monster and Queen. And who knows if that's correct after all these years. Okay, so Negra Tomasa was off of, it wasn't Monster, so I'm glad you looked it up.
Yeah, it was more Nigerino stuff.
Yeah, okay, so it was Lloyd's Cajun Midnight bred to El Mexicano's Monster. And it was, the bottom side was 50% or more, no more than 50% Nigerino. The top side, the Cajun Midnight dog, was double bred Buster, which is Bully Son to Arts Missy, bred to Holt's Redneck, which is double bred Boomerang to Corn Susie. Interesting little side note about Corn Susie. It just seems that a disproportionate number of the super dogs from that era had a little shot of the Corn's blood mixed into them. Corn Susie, let's see what she was. Off of Carver's Ace and Corn Stormy. So that's, I invite you guys that are watching this to look this up, because this is a kind of place where you can gain some advantage in studying old pedigrees. Corn's Ace was Bully Son to Mendocino, which is Bolio type stuff. And then the bottom side, Stormy, is Crenshaw's Snow. All right, so that's Ed Crenshaw, and he had some blood that nobody else had. He had some Leitner blood and some Sad Sack blood, and it seemed like there was some magic that came along with that. So anyway, this is the background on Negra Tomasa. She had really demonstrated herself as being a superior animal in an elaborate test. Thank you. And but she was available, and Rodney brought that to my attention, and she was in heat, if I remember correctly. And so he contacted me to say that dog was available, and he thought it would be a missed opportunity if somebody in the good guy camp didn't capitalize on it. So I authorized him to proceed and asked him to breed Simba to her. He did that, and I probably hadn't said thank you on the level that I should, and here I'll publicly say thank you, Rodney, for bringing that opportunity to my attention and for doing the legwork to make it happen. So he bred her to Simba, sent her to me, And at that point in time, my whole yard had been moved to my parents' place down in Georgia because just some of the issues that happened during that era. And she had her puppies in my mother's pantry, which is a nice little room off of the kitchen. And I only remember there being 3 females, but I've got this haunting little thought that maybe there was a male in there that something happened to him early, and I'm not remembering what happened, but I'm clearly remembering 3 females that were healthy and robust and just high quality animals. And they played a big role in my breeding program for a long time. And primarily what I did with them was I bred them to El Negro. And there was a lot of good dogs that got spread around the country that were from El Negro, bred to Simba Girl, Lady Simba, and Miss Simba. If you will, if you don't mind, look and see if there's a male shown on the Peds Online anywhere from that. I'm not remembering it if there was, but
it doesn't say there is.
Yeah,
but I was just waiting to see if you've nailed those 3
yeah.
females' names, because I'd looked up the offspring of Negra,
Yeah.
Tomasa.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess
mine isn't as bad as you think it is.
I've managed to get the brain cells lined up again. But at any rate, yeah, most of the breeding was done to El Negro, and but remember that there was one that played a role in producing Caesar. That was Simba Girl. Okay, on the other hand, I had done a breeding with Dynamite. Well, let's see. Let's pull that one up.
Dynamite to Cherry.
Yeah. Okay. So I bred Dynamite to Cherry. Cherry was a double-bred daughter of Frisco. And so we were very heavy on the top of Frisco. And that produced a nice litter that everywhere those dogs went, they made a difference. That's the Rampage dog that Nunzio got, the Dynamo dog that I kept, I believe the Rolex dog, if I remember correctly, that I sent to Forest Hill Kennels was from that. There was a dog named Infrared that my buddy at Weight and Gold got, and it was from a later breeding, I believe, a repeat breeding. But then my Dynamo dog that I've really thought a lot of came from that breeding. The Constantine dog that came from that breeding, there was a young gentleman from here in North Carolina that had come to speak with me a couple of times to pick my brain, and he was hungry and eager to learn what he could about breeding pit bulls and principles and strategies and so forth, and I kind of took him under my wing, and I sold him the Constantine dog as a pup. He wasn't Constantine then. That's the name that this young man put on him, and Constantine produced a lot of good dogs in his life and career. This young man, I don't have his permission to talk about him in a public forum, but I'll just refer him to him respectfully as the young man who had Constantine. He raised Constantine and was very happy with him, very proud of him. And as he got older, he came over to talk with me about the dog and ask about getting a female to breed to Constantine. And I looked at the pedigree and thought about it, and I said, I'm going to loan you the Simba girl female for you to take over there and get you a litter out of. So I did. He took her, bred her to Constantine, and produced a litter that ultimately was shown to produce or to include Bo and or Bear. I've heard him called both of those things, and Caesar, a dog named Caesar. Caesar, I don't know at what age he changed hands from this fella to another gentleman, but he did change hands. But in the hands of fella number 2, we'll call this guy Scott. He became known that he was a high caliber dog, and he was offered to me, and I purchased him, kept him for a while, did some breeding with him, and basically I was able to get some good young dogs off the ground on him, but honestly, they weren't old enough for me to fully evaluate. So I believed he was going to be a very good producer, but I had another gentleman come along that offered me a good price for him, and I sold him. After about 2 years, I knew what the young dogs were, that they were high quality, high caliber dogs, and that I wanted this Caesar dog back to do further breeding with. So I struck a deal with the fellow that I'd sold him to get him back, and he's spent the rest of his life here on my yard. Died of natural causes. In the meantime, a lot of high quality dog men were able to see the dog. They were able to breed to him, to see the quality of his genetics, and he developed a very strong following, and is held in very high esteem at this point in time, as he has been throughout most of his life. But it's especially so now that most of the picture has come into focus, and he's a known commodity. He's a nearly picture perfect conformation dog, and he had the intensity that you'd hope for. He had the intelligence, the natural endurance. He was a complete dog, and he was very near perfect conformationally. There was a time that my good friend Vinny Romeo came over for one of our pig pickings. I think that's probably 2 or 3 years ago, and he just went in the pen with Caesar and sat down on top of his concrete doghouse, and Caesar hopped up, and I think he had his head in his lap, and Vinny just shook his head and just talked about what a beautiful dog he was, just what an incredible specimen that he was. And for Vinny to have that kind of reaction to any dog, the dog's got to be really special. So yeah, if you got any Caesar blood, cherish it. If you can get any Caesar blood, get it. It's one of those junctures on the continuum in which everything came into focus and everything blossomed, and all the good things that are potential became real. Truly one of the extraordinary dogs from my career. Any further questions you might have about?
I guess your thoughts on how you bred Caesar when you did breedings. It seems like a lot of the successful breedings were into more Frisco, especially like Frisco Liling dogs. So where a lot of times you talk about things needing a cross, except for the Eli dogs, you talk about them getting better as they're inbred.
Yeah.
And it seems like a lot of the successful breedings with Caesar were almost a kind of Frisco inbreeding.
Yeah, we don't always look at only the breeding that we're doing. We look at the path that we're invoking whenever we do a breeding, and see where it can go in the next step. Sort of like playing chess. You don't just look at, okay, I'm going to move my rook over here because it's going to take that pawn out, and wow, we're going to kick that pawn's ass. Well, if you give up your rook, then what have you gained? And breedings are the same way. You got to look 2 or 3 generations downstream. And if you look at, I didn't really talk about how we put, what the rationales were whenever we bred Constantine to Simba girl, but Simba girl had a significant amount of Frisco, but also had Nigerino, more Nigerino that was shown to work out well with Frisco Chinaman. So it was a way of invoking that. And Dynamite, of course, was an inbred Frisco dog. But to move up to what we did with Caesar and how we bred him, we did well whenever we bred him back into high quality Frisco dogs. We also did well whenever we bred him back into like females that came off of El Negro back into Simba girl or her sisters. We pretty much stayed with the heavy Eli stipulation, but there was several ways of approaching it that would yield a different product. If Caesar back into a heavy Frisco dog produced a different dog than Caesar into a heavy Eli dog or a heavy El Negro dog, and they were good dogs. I think the most physically rugged were the ones that were back into the Eli dogs. The ones that had more finesse were predictably so back into the more heavy Frisco dogs, because you have a heavier bolio component, and those dogs are noteworthy for their intelligence.
And I wanted to come back to the Nigerino. You said you enjoyed the company of Sam Cates, and he was a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
But what was it in the Nigerino dog specifically that makes you? Because it's not very often that you bring in new stuff to the program, because there's already so many great bloodlines. So what was it about the Nigerino dog specifically that made you interested in them?
I believe he had a title in front of his name. It was something like Grand Champion. So that kind of elevates him above the rest to start with, plus the fact that he was comprised of Eli bloodlines. And if I remember correctly, he was one of those rare dogs that had art in him. And so if I'm remembering that correctly, the presence of art, the fact that he was the color of art, which is very superficial to even say something like that, but sometimes you just can't help yourself, Yeah. sometimes you can screw yourself by trying to avoid something that is simple, when in reality sometimes the simple thing is the true thing. In a nutshell, I viewed him as being a proven high caliber Eli dog, and it was an opportunity to bring a branch of the Eli family back together with my branch of the Eli family. So you kind of cheat the devil whenever you're able to do that. You're able to not change families, but you're able to bring in a little bit of hybrid vigor and not change families. So usually the cost that you pay from inbreeding is the or tight breeding is the loss of hybrid vigor. In this case, you just get the added bonus of the added vigor without massively increasing the variability in your gene pool.